We've always had this robust digital presence with Rama TV. So it was easy in one way for us to pivot, because that's been always part of the experience. But obviously the spaces are empty, and when we did have a moment where we had people back in the spaces, Mallorca's open, but when our Venice Beach studio opened again and people came back, I found myself like frightened, like not frightened that they were there, but like just surprised that like all of a sudden people were in the room. I mean, it's pretty amazing how quickly we get used to things one way or the other. And it's also beautiful because humans are very adaptable, but we have to be careful about what we're adapting to and why, and conscious about those things. But yeah, no, I think all of the social experience is completely changing, and I think that that's part of one of the agendas that are, there's so many different things happening, but I think one of the things that are happening is an AI kind of artificial intelligence agenda to make people more frightened of each other than they already were, which is, I think, working actually.
Which is in strong contrast to what we're trying to do and what Kundalini tries to do.
Yeah.
That actually a bit to the present moment, but maybe for the ones who don't know you, if you could just tell a little bit, who are you and how did you get where you are with all these endeavors like fashion, TV, institute? How did you go there?
Well, I have always, I've always been on a path of spiritual exploration, and I knew that I wanted a bigger life than just kind of get a job, get married, own some things, work until you are sick or until you can retire and then die. I mean, that just wasn't the life I was interested in living. So I went on, a spiritual path very early, and that led me to Yogi Bhajan and my practice of Kundalini Yoga and meditation. But there was some, there was some exploration thereof. I was definitely, my childhood was, my mother is an explorer, and we got to do all sorts of interesting things. And I was encouraged to be myself, which I think is the best thing you can do as a parent. And so, but by the time I found Yogi Bhajan, I had, I was born literally a couple miles away from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's stupa in outside of Boulder, Colorado, and there was just, a lot of kind of crossroads of spiritual exploration. But by the time I started to practice and really, deepen my own meditation practice and all of this, I just looked around at what the spiritual communities were doing and what was happening in them. And I felt very early on that I wanted to create something that was more of a real kind of everything big tent included space. And that's really what Rama was created out of, is that vision of you can meditate in the same place that you can see a fashion show. You can chant mantras in the same place that you can meet, a new friend or a romantic interest. You can, do spiritual practice or do a contemplative practice or sound, frequencies in the same place that you can find your next, great outfit or inspire your next great art piece. So that was really my vision of creating Rama Institute in 2013. And then everything, all the other locations and the virtual experiences and the fashion and the kind of world that's been created is really a movement of art. Because I believe that living your life in a spirit-filled way is really an artistic endeavor.
Yeah, and what I connected very quickly when I met you in the teacher training is that you're just really trying to get things into the culture. It's work you need to do if you go into a class. It doesn't come easy, but just this bringing together, not separating business and spirituality, not being afraid of making these leaps and jumps and finding new forms. And that goes very much into the thinking pattern, what the science does behind Kundalini Yoga. Maybe could you just share a bit about what this science does to you and how it helped you to think that way?
Well, I was actually thinking about, things that I think are important to be thinking about right now, this morning. And I mean, really what the yogis and the sages and all these spiritual lineages and the practitioners, what they were doing over these past 7,000 plus years, it's been much more than that, 25,000, 30,000. Egypt, really they're putting Egypt in some of the mystery schools of Egypt at 25,000 at least years ago. And so all of those lineages between the Atlanteans and the Egyptians and the Lemurians and the all the kind of esoteric Middle Eastern spiritual lineages pre any religion. And then we get into the religions and in the East and India and Tibet and China and Japan, all sorts of kind of yogic and meditative contemplative practices, moving through those different kinds of lineages. All of those humans were looking for a science to optimize the human experience and the human system. And Kundalini Yoga is in one way it is itself a big tent or an amalgamation of many of those practices that have been collected by certain practitioners to kind of hold a science of human optimization. And it's been practiced and experimented with and perfected over thousands and thousands of years. So that's why it's so effective. There's a lot of experimentation and practice that goes behind some of these very simple and fast practices. It's effective because it's been practiced for thousands and thousands of years. And then, I mean, you could say some of it has come from the future too, but it depends on how you look at time. But so that's the Kundalini yoga and meditation. They're fast, easy, sometimes not easy techniques to optimize the human system in a time where the yogis and the sages and a lot of the kind of prophets knew that this time was going to be a difficult time. And maybe they didn't know how difficult it was going to be, but they knew it was going to be difficult. And so I think these practices are more current than ever because of what we're facing.
Can you expand on that one aspect, for example, the daily practice, the sadhana? Why is that so important to have a real routine in that context as you described?
Well, as we just spoke of, the human is a habit creature. And so whatever we habitually do, we habitually become. Whatever we habitually do, we habitually become. Whatever we habitually say to ourselves and others, we habitually start to become that self-fulfilling prophecy. And so that's the power of sound, and that's the power of our own ability to create, because we're creators as humans. So when you're talking about daily practice, whether it's 3 minutes or whether it's however long you can have time for. Sorry, the trash is getting taken out. It's a metaphor, but however long you have time for, 3 minutes is a good amount of time, especially if you do the same thing every day. That starts to create a pattern or habit in your mind patterns, in your neuron patterns, in your nervous system, in the way that you're moving through the world, in the habit of what you're thinking, and the habit of what you're saying, the habit of how you're treating yourself, the habit of how you're treating others. So that's the daily practice kind of thing, is that we're creatures of habit. So whatever we do habitually are going to start to become who we are, and we can change that, and that we have the power to change that. So if we don't like who we are or how we're behaving, we can change that. And Kundalini also provides the science of that change. If you want to change a habit or change the way you're thinking or change the way you're behaving in your relationships or with money or with your health or whatever it is, the practicals.
Mm-hmm.
And could you describe the border of where does the spiritual and the physical meet, like in Kundalini? What's that space? What happens there?
Well, we in this science and the yogic science, you have 10 bodies. So there's 10 bodies. One of them is physical, and then the rest of them are either mental or vibrational or subtle or energetic. And so when we're doing any Kundalini exercise, we're working all 10 of those bodies. And I think that's one of the reasons why Kundalini is becoming more and more popular, is because you can really move the physical body and get what is a nice workout with the physical body simultaneously with moving the mental bodies, the spiritual bodies, the etheric bodies, the more subtle bodies. And I think that is really it's very efficient. And I think a lot of times when you start to look at yourself that way, the physical becomes the etheric, and the etheric becomes the physical. And it's a real experience. It's not an idea. It's a real experience inside of yourself. That those boundaries are very lucid and very very transparent.
Where do words or expressions like ego and identity come into this?
Well, the ego, it's used a lot, I think, in ways that are a little bit misunderstood. Mm-hmm. Because the ego is a container, basically, for your mind and your body. And you can fill in that container good things, or you can fill in that container negative things. You can identify with the container rather than what's inside of it, which is what, a lot of people in the West have been taught to do, is, I am the container, I'm not what's inside of it. So that's the ego. But positive ego, what I would call positive ego, is very pragmatic, because it's the thing that's going to make you want to do better at work or school, or accomplish something, or give something back to the world. Part of that is positive ego. If you didn't have it, you'd just go and meditate in a cave. And a lot of people, that's their, in terms of contemplative lineages, that's their goal, is to, how much can I meditate? How deeply can I meditate? The Kundalini lineage is a householder's practice. So if you don't have the ego kind of working in a positive way, you might forget to pick up the kids at soccer practice. You might not think it's important to clean up your house. I've seen lots of people in spiritual ego death, and it looks like a psychosis. It's very close to a psychosis. So most of us don't have time for a psychosis. We actually are trying to do things in the world. So the ego it's a positive tool if used properly. Mm. And there's some more kind of esoteric stuff around that, but I think that's an important thing to understand, is that if you use it properly, it is a useful tool, and it will help you to remember to do things and to try to do better tomorrow, and to, keep yourself healthy and feel good, feeling good about yourself, feeling good in your body, stuff like that. It's a positive ego. And so the ego is not always bad.
I asked last time we asked Byron Katie because she, works on the ego and to get rid of all of the identities and be in the know. And one of my main questions was always okay, what drives you? And she gave the image of a plant. A plant grows, so it doesn't have. So maybe that also plays into it, that we're just kind of naturally here to create and to do, at least in our experience. So I would. Do you see this? Can you connect with that? That it's just maybe a natural state, human state, to be active and do things and explore instead of just sitting in a cave?
I think that the creative impulse is very much the natural state of a human, and how you use the creative impulses can be very different. But the difference between Byron Katie's kind of lineage and take on the kind of ego death, or the kind of deconstruction of that, is there's different intention. And these are where different lineages come from, is that there's a different intention, because in Kundalini, our intention is really, and has been, in terms of the way that these, practices have been transmitted and passed, our intention is to build businesses and build families and be politicians and do things in the world that are significant. And, just like I think hip hop is a good example of this. You have to have a little attitude to get by in a very polarized planet. So, you have to have a little attitude. And so there's a little bit of a different intention, but it all brings us back to the same light of God, or creativity, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it. It's just a little bit of a different way of getting there. And you could call it, like, I'm sure Byron Katie wouldn't describe it this way, but you could call what part of her work and the deconstruction of the mind patterns and the ego patterns, the negative ego patterns, it's connected to kind of a bhakti frequency, like a very expanded heart frequency. She's such a expanded heart Ma frequency, and such a powerful practitioner and teacher. And then, Kundalini is a little bit more of the Shakti path, which is, it's a little bit more of kind of figuring out how to, in the grit, in the pressures, in the rub of our human existence, how do we use what we've been given in the most positive way? And then there is deconstruction of thought patterns, subconscious thought patterns, which the work is all about as well. So it all weaves back into the same ultimate goal.
And I think what's so powerful about the Kundalini attitude and your attitude and what you just described is that this is what moves you and us forward on an individual level. But when you think about what brings change forward for everyone on a bigger scale, it's maybe not the big revolutions. Maybe it's the constant activeness of creating new things and translating these new patterns into new businesses, but creating these spaces for it. So that to me feels, I connect very much with the way forward, and it's really helpful because it's not brutal, it's not destructive, it's just forward and creative.
So would you describe Kundalini as a way of revolution?
I lost you for a second, Nadine. Will you say that again?
If just to add on to this, and to have this way, as you say, and as you everything described, you could feel that kind of doing the revolution through Kundalini is something that holds you on the path to also bring humanity on a forward path, and not to make it too big of a frame, but it is to gather people and to have this daily practice and to work on yourself, that you are able to change stuff, not only from yourself, but also in communities.
Yeah. I mean, it was something that I'm thinking about and talking about and always talk about, is it takes strength to be a leader. And I really feel that we need new leadership in all aspects of politic and in geopolitics, and our environmental policies, in education. I mean, this is global. I'm not just speaking to any specific country. We need new leadership, and what in my opinion, has to happen is that people who have meditative practices and contemplative practices and some sort of spiritual connectivity, which can look very different for everyone, but we have to be the people who step up into leadership. And as you guys know, leadership is not easy, and leadership is polarizing. And leadership, being a leader requires being out in the crosswinds of criticism and cancel culture and all this kind of stuff. And it takes real strength. And that to me ultimately is anything you're doing, whether it's Kundalini or anything else. At this point on the planet, it's a good thing to have an intention of I want to be strong enough to be able to lead my family, lead my business, be a good citizen in my neighborhood. Do things that I can do to help move policy forward and move consciousness forward and move locally or more, move new thought, a new era on the planet forward. So, but this all takes strength. And this is why I think a lot of good people haven't stepped up to be in leadership position, because they don't want to deal with what comes with it. I mean, I talked to Marianne Williamson about this last year when she was still in the presidential race. She was just like, this is taking every spiritual tool I have to deal with this political arena. And so we actually have an opportunity to be more human and more with each other than we've ever been. And so this is what part of the age of Aquarius is about. Inside the technological advancements is an opportunity to be more human. And not everyone's going to take that opportunity. And so that's the choice that we're really, really standing at a crossroads. And the technocrats have an agenda. And I think for anyone who's interested in being an awakened human, you have to make sure you know what these artificial intelligence programs are doing all day long as you're participating in technology. There's nothing wrong with it, but you need to be informed and you need to educate yourself. And then, the age of Aquarius is also an age of human experience rather than a belief, an age of belief. The age of Pisces was kind of encased in religious wars, religious belief systems, religious kind of structures, and the kind of warring religions. And I believe this, and you believe that. And my God is different than yours, and all that kind of stuff. And now it's the age of experience. But now what we're facing is the technological age of cancel culture, which is about it's the same as some of these kind of crusades that they went on in the medieval times, where I'm going to kill you because you don't believe in the things I believe in. Mm-hmm. Cancel culture is another iteration of that, but it's in the technological space.
Kundalini Yoga is such a tool to be not in too much into, or have at least distance or control over the technology we are surrounded with, social media, that we have the control and not we are controlled. You say that very often. And can you give an example or expand a little bit more on that?
Well, there's been a lot of concern and fear over the 5G. Mm-hmm. The 5G-ification of the planet during this COVID crisis. And so this is one example. I've talked to a lot of people who are very concerned about 5G, from David Icke's son to the guy who wrote a book called The Invisible Rainbow, which is a book, Arthur Furstenberg, which describes how technological electromagnetic advancements on the planet have always been paired with, or for a period of time, hundreds of years, have been paired with pandemics. Mm-hmm. And how more electrification of the planet creates these kind of viral pandemics. Whether you believe that or not, or whether you've been thinking about this, there is a concern that 5G is not good for our health, and it's not good for our bodies, and it affects our cellular health and all this kind of stuff. My opinion is that if you practice something that strengthens the electromagnetic field, the natural electromagnetic field of your body and your mind, you're going to be more protected from things like electromagnetic radiation. And so this is just one example of, the practice gives you the power to not be as affected by electromagnetic radiation. And some people are this is ruining their whole lives, electromagnetic radiation. So this is just one, example of how, when you have the strength to build your own electromagnetic shield, which is what Kundalini gives you, then the 5G can't penetrate you, make you sick, kind of fritz you out as much as someone who doesn't have that technology.
And the ritual experiences that I think last year at the Arama Festival, which was mind-blowing, with 350 people chanting in this beautiful church or historic space in Palma, describing all of these different agendas going on currently out there. How important, what type of experiences can we do now, and how much do we have to step up? What's your sense of next short-term steps, and how much do you, we are in a reactive mode, but to what extent shall we be active? And if we're active, what role does ritual gatherings play for you?
I think that the resurgence of gatherings is going to be like bigger than ever before after this. Just as after the 1918 pandemic, we had the Roaring 20s. So much happened in Berlin after that. There was, Berlin was, so much of the historic parts of Berlin happened post World War I, and obviously the 1918 pandemic. So I do think we're going to have a big swing back to these, really interesting social and energetic and spiritual and whatever, just gatherings. I think it's going to take a minute, but I think it will happen. And I think it's going to be bigger and more sophisticated than ever. So I do want to say to anyone who's in that space, hold on, keep creating, because I do feel like it's going to be huge. Any brick and mortar people, my experience, and I see all these people with you guys, people want to be with each other. We miss each other. And we're going to find ways to do it.
And two big points are business education that you are moving forward, and women education. Can you describe this also, why these two lines are so important in your activities?
Yeah. Women are the carriers of the next generation. So when you create spaces for women to evolve, you're going to help shape the future, and that's always been the intention of women's work. I do feel that there's, it's a very interesting time in terms of the women's movements, both in regards to social justice movements and anti-racist movements, and also in regards to just the powers that be in the feminist movements. And this is what I'm writing my book about, which I am done almost. I just handed in my manuscript. So it is really about what does feminism look like now post Me Too, because now we have a crisis of, I think there's a major crisis with men and with mental health, men's mental health, with where, how we rebuild society in different ways that aren't just reacting to each, men are really having a hard time. And there is a lot that needs to be talked about around that, but you can't talk about it because if you do, you're a bad feminist. And you're not kind of in the mob of the kind of feminist, Me Too feminist movement. And so my book is really railing against that and talking about what has to evolve in society for both women and men in any gender, to be able to create a new relationships and to really create resonance in all gender spectrum, for new types of understanding. And so that's part of what I'm talking about, is a new era of women's liberation that's not a reaction, but that's actually about really our responsibility as women to be the midwives of this new society, and how I believe men, whether you're in a relationship with a man or a woman or whatever gender, but I do believe that men want to change just as much as women. They want to evolve, and there's a lot of kind of societal and post-religious stuff that is about their gender roles and what they're supposed to be like, and their emotional kind of space that needs to be addressed. So that's part of what my new book is talking about, and then really calling women to take another level of responsibility for bringing us all into this next evolution.
And do you think most of the solutions are already here and we just need to find them? Or is it about new patterns and side roads and side tracks? Like, is it about picking stuff up or coming up with new things in general to move things forward?
I think that in general, this is inherent to us. We know that things need to be thought of differently, and that we can't just blame each other. I mean, that never works. That's not evolution. So I've talked to a lot of men who are, they're afraid to date right now because if you do the wrong thing or you say the wrong thing, then you're going to get accused of something. I mean, this is real. And I think it's when young men growing up in this time it's a really intense moment, and a lot of it has to it's had to happen so that we can unwind some of the ways that we've been upholding these old structures. But we all feel it's time to change, and so I'm just hoping more conversations with men. It's really important. It's actually something I've worked with women for so long. Now I want to work more with men, because I think these conversations have to happen, and there's something healing. I have a lot of men who reach out to me and say, thank you for not just being another one of these kind of cookie cutter cliche feminists. I really it means a lot to me to have a strong woman care about me and what I'm bringing to society and bringing to relationship. And so it's time for the men to be recognized as well.
And what's your stand in general on obviously the resurgence of this tribalism and group identity? What's the danger here, and how do you see that subject?
Well, I think that there's a lot of reactivity right now. And inside the reactivity is pain and trauma. And so, I very much feel that, especially with the social justice movements and the movements to kind of wake up as white people and whatever race you are or culture you are, to wake up to how these oppressive structures have been working for you or working against you, or how you've been numb to them. I mean, I think this is all part of the process. And in that, so in some of the kind of divisiveness and tribalism that's happening, there's kind of really underneath it is the need to heal and the need to awaken and be more responsible for those who have held these power, kind of power positions, and those who are who have been in oppressed positions in the kind of this era that we came from. And so I think all this deconstruction is important, but ultimately the reactivity is not going to get us where we need to go. But it's part of the process. So it's one thing as a yogi is you have to, cultivate the neutrality of the long game. So I do feel that there's a lot more happening and will happen. And as people, if people want to live in these kind of huge swings of reactivity, then that's where they're going to live. And then there's many people who really want to come to the table and have the hard conversations and do things better and be more conscious. And so, I think there's the great, what they call in Tibetan Buddhism, the great Eastern sun, which is the dawning of the enlightened age. It is upon us. It's just, there's these swings that are happening, and it's important to try to play the long game and let people also witness people's pain. I mean, I think that's one thing that I really feel as a white person on this planet. And what has been happening is can I just feel uncomfortable and witness the pain of an oppressed culture, oppressed different, oppressive structures? Can I witness both my own pain of however my lineage or however I've participated subconsciously, and can I witness the pain of others without, making them wrong, without making me wrong? I mean, that's true compassion.
And do you think we have some universal forces supporting in this area, or can it go into kind of all directions, or when you say the trend into the Aquarian age, is that something where we can relax a little bit, that we have some energetic forces behind these positive movements, or do you think we can screw it up in many ways?
I think we can really screw it up. No time to relax. We got to be on our game here. We can really screw this up. And we've done so good at screwing it up before, but no, it's important we have to be very alert right now, especially with all of the different agendas that are being co-opted for other agendas. So, there's a pure power of human awakening happening. And then there's some multi-tiered agendas on top of that, to create divisiveness, to create more inequalities, to create more kind of otherness and all of these kinds of things. So we have to just stay alert to that and use whatever tools we have, which Kundalini is one of them, to make sure that you're pointing your attention in the right direction. Because ultimately the greatest commodity, and I say this over and over, but this is true now because we're in front of screens constantly. The greatest commodity is our attention. What are we putting our attention on? And why, and how has it gotten our attention, and who's behind it, and what's moving, what's actually moving the agenda forward, and is that agenda for the good of all, or is it connected to creating more of what we've had before? And those are all questions you should be asking yourself on the daily.
And those established structures and those different agendas that are in place, they're probably centuries in building and in making. So how do you build new structures in the face of facing some of this centuries of establishment and agendas?
Well, I think what's happening, as it always has happened, honestly, this is not different, except it's a little bit more advanced in terms of the technological age. But what's happening is that on top of this is like what the Mayans talk about, or what many spiritual prophecy is about at this time, which is that there's a split in the time streams, and that those who want to be a part of the ascension and the solution, they're going to do that, and that's a daily decision. And then those that are still caught in the mud of time, as Hadij even calls it, and the the abuses and the trauma and the drama and all of that, they're going to be experiencing that. And so we build the new civilization on basically on top of this crumbling, we build it on top of it simultaneously, because time isn't horizontal. So we're building it just as these other things are moving and shifting. And this is, empires rise and empires fall. And those who have kind of some experience of reincarnation on this planet are not as kind of troubled by the big picture. But one thing I would just say to everyone is keep the long story in your daily kind of action and decision, because this is just one drop in the bucket of a long journey of human awakening on planet Earth. And it's good to keep a context for what's really going on, and then participate as much as you can. And that does require alertness. And so I wouldn't say it's necessarily a time to relax. I would say we gotta be very alert right now.
And have to claim it, then change.
Yes.
Understood. Thank you very much. I know you have to go to the studio to teach the morning class.
To class.
Yes, yeah. We wished we would be there.
Yeah.
And
we'll see you soon here or in Mallorca.
We will. We hope to make it
physical.
Yeah, we hope to make it to Europe before the end of the year. We're putting that prayer out.
Yes, and in the meantime, we do what we can, all of us.
Love to Shabbat and Teknam and everyone.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Sorry for that little glitch, but it was so good to see you guys.
See you soon. Satnam.
Satnam. Bye, everyone.